I thought I had it all. My boyfriend, let's call him Jake, was the reliable, stable, predictable type. A little boring at times? Sure, but after a string of bad boys, the predictability felt like a relief. We've been together for almost 3 years, living together and doing the typical grown-up stuff: work, planning vacations, grocery shopping. He's a great father to his daughter, and honestly, I admired how he managed his responsibilities. But here's where I might lose your sympathy. I have a wild side, and sometimes I crave that rush of adrenaline that comes from stepping outside the lines. My girlfriends would call me the life of the party, and I like to think of myself as someone who could balance the wild and the tame. At least until my past came knocking on the door of my seemingly perfect little life. It all started with an invitation. My college friend group, you know the type, guys who never outgrew their frat phase and love to relive the glory days, was planning a birthday trip to the Dominican Republic. The catch? This wasn't just any friend group. It was the yacht crew. Yes, that crew. Over a decade ago, during one reckless summer in college, my girlfriends and I joined this group of guys for Yacht Week, sailing across pristine waters while sipping cocktails and dancing under the stars. The energy, the chaos, the pure debauchery, it was unforgettable. I did hook up with a couple of the guys back then, including one who later became a closer friend. But that was ancient history, right? The invite was last minute, like a forgotten secret slipping out of the past and into my inbox. The group's ringleader, Jason, was throwing an extravagant party, and everyone was coming back together for a week of nostalgia and indulgence. I was excited, to say the least. But then came the hard part, telling Jake. Why would you even want to go? Jake's voice was calm, but I could sense the frustration underneath. Why wouldn't I? I replied, trying to keep it breezy, even though I knew this wouldn't go well. Jason's throwing the party of the year, and I haven't seen the group in ages. He paused. I saw his jaw tighten. Isn't this the same group you've, been with? I could feel my irritation rising. Seriously? That was years ago. I wouldn't do anything now. I even said you could come with me. And subject myself to a week of pretending to like your frat boy ex-flings? He scoffed, shaking his head. I laughed, one of those laughs that slips out without thinking. Oh, come on, Jake. What are you afraid of? That I'll run off with Jason? Please. He couldn't handle me even if he tried. And then, I crossed the line. Or are you worried you're not enough of a man to keep up? The second those words left my mouth, I saw something shift in Jake's expression. It wasn't just anger, it was something deeper, something almost broken. I thought he'd fire back, but instead, he stood up, grabbed his car keys, and walked out the door without another word. For a moment, I just stood there, dumbfounded. Jake wasn't the type to storm off. He was the steady one, the calm one. Sure, we argued like any couple, but he was always the first to de-escalate, to talk it through. This time, he just left. And you know what? A tiny, petty part of me wanted him to. I wanted him to stew, to realize he was being ridiculous. But as the hours passed and his side of the bed remained empty that night, my confidence started to waver. The next morning, Jake came home. His face was unreadable as he grabbed a duffel bag and started packing. What are you doing? I asked, trying to sound casual, even as my heart raced. He didn't look at me as he replied, I'm staying with my brother for a few days. I need some time to think. To think about what? I shot back, feeling my frustration bubble to the surface. Are you seriously this insecure about me going on a trip? He finally looked up, and the weight in his eyes made me falter. It's not just the trip. It's you, and how little you think of me. His words hit harder than I expected, leaving me standing there in stunned silence as he walked out the door again. The next few days were strange. Jake's absence left a hole I didn't know how to fill. The house felt too quiet, too cold. I tried to act like I didn't care, texting my girlfriends about trip details and ignoring the gnawing sense of guilt in the back of my mind. But late at night, when the distractions faded, I replayed our argument over and over again. And that's when it hit me, Jake didn't leave because he was weak or insecure. He left because I made him feel that way. The week of the trip arrived, and I was torn. part of me still wanted to go. It was easier than facing the mess I'd made with Jake. But another part of me knew that no tropical paradise could fix what I was running from. Just as I was debating whether to get in the car and head to the airport, the doorbell rang. It was Jake. He looked different. Not angry, not broken, just stronger somehow, like he'd been through something I couldn't quite grasp. "I've been doing some thinking," he said, stepping inside. "And I realized that I can't stop you from going on this trip. But I needed to figure out what I want, too." He sat down across from me, his gaze steady. "Do you know what I want?" he asked, his voice calm but firm. I shook my head, too stunned to speak. "I want a partner who sees me for who I am, not who I'm not. I don't care about frat boys or yachts or any of that stuff. I care about us, and I want to build a life with someone who's all in. So, if you're going on this trip, you need to figure out where you stand. Because I know where I stand and I'm not waiting forever for you to figure it out." His words left me speechless. For the first time in days, I saw the man I fell in love with not because he'd changed, but because he'd finally stood up for himself. Jake didn't need to be flashy or loud to prove his strength. It was in his quiet confidence, his ability to set boundaries, his refusal to let me take him for granted. In that moment, I knew I had a choice to make. And for the first time, the answer was clear. I canceled the trip. Not because Jake told me to, but because I realized I didn't need it. I didn't need the frat boys, the yacht crew, or the fleeting thrill of the past. I needed the future I was building with Jake, and I wasn't about to let it slip away. It wasn't easy. We had long conversations about trust, respect, and how to rebuild the parts of our relationship I'd fractured. But we made it through, stronger than ever. Sometimes, it takes losing someone to realize how much they mean to you. And sometimes, it takes them walking away to remind you of their worth. Never underestimate the quiet strength of a man who knows his own value.